was provided to them was very much, you know, whatever who the da'i was or the people they were in contact with in the organization, whatever they felt was follow up is what they would do. In 2015, we implemented a new Muslim care and education system, but by within 2 years, we realized that the uh, the maximum number of people that we could ever get was I think it's like 31% of the people would ever attend classes and there was any kind of follow up. So out of every 100 people, no more than 30, 35, and we reached a maximum. I think it was about 40 people out of every 100 would actually have any kind of follow up. They'd attend classes. Despite whatever we did, we were not able to kind of break that glass ceiling. And so over the course of the next year or so, I traveled. I did some workshops in Malaysia, in Kenya, in Kampala, and here in Bahrain. And I talked to a lot of new Muslims. And through that, we came up with a very innovative new way of new Muslim care. And we implemented this 2 years ago in 2019. And by last year, by August of last year, we had a follow up of 89% were being followed up by the organization, and they were actually attending classes, were actively involved in learning Islam and practicing Islam. 9% of that group chose to self-study, and only 2% were not being followed up in any way. Um, Here in Bahrain, we have, and in many Gulf countries, and I think even in Malaysia, they have what we call here a Shahada certificate, a person being provided a certificate saying that they have now converted to Islam. So, in the past 6, 7 years ago, in our organization here, we would have no more than 15 to 20% of the people who converted to Islam get a certificate. As of the end of last year, that figure is close to about 87% of the converts do want and get that Shahada certificate. So we brought about a lot of changes, but these changes were really things that we thought would be a good idea to do. But there's no real backing to this. We don't really know, or rather, we don't have real data to back up the new Muslim care system that we've implemented. And this is exactly the direction that I want to study. So I want to study two groups: the African community, the African expat new Muslims, and the Filipino new Muslims. And that even here in Bahrain. The reason I've chosen these two groups is one, they're fluent in English, so language is not a barrier. And two, they are the largest two groups of new Muslims that we have. Over the last 5, 6 years, we have several thousand Africans and Filipinos that have converted to Islam here in Bahrain, and they live in Bahrain, and we have direct access to them. So we want to look at, I would like to look at their stories and their conversion, what exactly happened during Shahada and what happened immediately after Shahada, and how we could apply these findings to Da'wah, to Shahada, and new Muslim care and education in the real world. Because these are two very different groups of people from very different parts of the world, I think that if they have a common experience and we come up with the same ideas from them, that maybe we can then extrapolate from these two groups to the larger new Muslim community globally. The research objectives I have are to understand the significance of the conversion process itself, the Shahada itself, to understand the significance of the period immediately after a person converts to Islam. And this, I feel, the anecdotal evidence that we have, the experience that we've had in the hundreds of shahadas that we've witnessed is, and many of you may be able to relate to this, is when a person accepts Islam, the moment of conversion, the moment of shahada is very significant. You can see that it's a very emotional moment for a lot of people who take shahada. It's like the description a lot of people have given me is it's like water falling down on their heads and going down, and they feel much lighter. Uh, a lot of people give that kind of a response to what it was like when they took Shahada. But their entire worldview changes. And most new Muslims are not prepared for what happens next. So, what we do here, what we are teaching our du'at, is how to prepare the new Muslims, and this has helped a lot. There are ideas like establishing trust, transfer of trust, things of that sort, and these are the areas that I want to explore in the study. And alhamdulillah, we have access to a large number of people that we will be able to get some of these questions answered. So I have a bunch of questions that I put together, and I'm hoping that they're not too many, and they're to the point. So I'll share some of these questions with you. So, what are the key reasons that lead someone to declare their Shahada? What are the various reasons why people change their religion to Islam? What correlations are there, if any, between these reasons of accepting Islam and a person's demography, their age, their gender, their ethnicity, education, their job, etc.? Are there specific ways in which people think when they take Shahada? And is this something that is common to people? And one of the biggest questions that we have that we've been exploring here is should follow up start before the Shahada itself, or is it at the point of Shahada? Uh, if you don't mind, somebody just say something because I feel like I've been talking to myself for a long time because I can't see anybody.
Muhammad, you're
Is
doing a
everybody
great
still
job. I can hear you.
okay? Excellent. Thank you. Jazakumullah khair, Zulfikar. I was just talking to myself all this time. Okay, moving on. Uh, the second area that, or set of questions I have is what happens exactly at the moment of Shahada? What is going through the mind of the person during conversion? Uh, do people who are converting have similar ideas? Uh, does the Shahada ritual itself have an impact on how people understand and practice Islam later on? Like that story I gave you about the sister who converted to Islam. I mean, just for a moment, put yourself in the shoes of somebody where they are put in front of a large audience of people, 300,
क्लास
400
चल रही
people,
भाई.
who are not like you, who are very different from you, and you're asked to recite words that you have no idea what they mean. So just imagine for a moment any one of us that we are put in that position. I would think that would be a very traumatic experience for me. That if I were in front of a large group of Christians or a large group of Hindus or any other grouping of people, and they're all one kind of group, they understand, and they're chanting certain things that I have no idea what they're saying. So I think I would really like to understand that are we doing justice and are we doing a favor to our brothers and sisters when they convert to Islam and we go through the process? Okay, Ashhadu Allah, the whole. It's the right way to do things, or is there a better way to do things? And are there any lessons that we can learn from this research? Uh, and then the big question I have is what happens immediately after? What happens the moment somebody has accepted Islam? This big, huge event, do they have doubts about it? Is there something like buyer's remorse? You've taken something and you've adopted something, a different way of life, and then you're thinking, did I do the right thing? And of course, shaitan is constantly there. How long do these doubts linger? Are there specific moments that are particularly significant to the new Muslim? Is there a period after Shahada, after conversion to Islam, that can be identified across a large number of people as being significant, as being noteworthy? That this period of time we have to really take care of our brothers and sisters and make sure that they're taken care of the right way. And can that time period be divided into stages? That okay, this is this is immediate post shahada. That this is what they go through in the first hour, the first 24 hours, the first week, the first month, uh, and also looking at the circle of contacts that we have. Each and every one of us has a group of people around us that are close to us. Here in our organization and the da'wah that we do, we call this 1 to 10. It's a rough way of looking at that. Each one of us has at least 10 people around us who are significant to us or important to us, whether it is a spouse, a parent, a sibling, a co-worker, and these people are immediately impacted by anything that happens to us. So imagine taking shahada, converting from one faith to another. How do the people who are closest to you deal with that, and how do you in turn deal with them? So these are some of the ideas that I'm looking at. I'll stop sharing this screen with you, and Uh, the other areas that in my research proposal I've gone further than that. I've also looked at apart from the research questions and all, I've also looked at the let me get to it one moment, please. The research hypothesis, and it's along the lines of what exactly I've been saying all this time, that these two particular time periods, the time somebody accepts Islam and the time immediately thereafter, their experiences, the kind of experiences that new Muslims go through, has a huge impact on what they understand of what Islam is and how they practice Islam. In some cases, they may even leave the faith based on the experiences that they've had. So I'm suggesting that these are the most significant times, and I want to figure out the reasons as to why they are the most significant times. The research methodology that I want to use is, alhamdulillah, in my capacity as the head of this da'wah organization here, I have access to almost over 8,000 people who have accepted Islam in the last 5 years. About 60% of this group is from the Philippines, all fluent in English, and about 15% are English speaking African expats. They make up almost about 6,000 potential interview subjects, and I would like to reach out to as large a number of them as possible. At first, I do pilot interviews with a smaller group, like a group of, let's say, about 20. From there, I would go into focus groups of 30 to 40 subjects, and from that develop a set of questionnaires, a survey that I would hopefully conduct to over 2,000 people here in Bahrain. And the means that I would do to do all this is, given the pandemic, that we've learned how to use Zoom and other technologies that we have, I would take advantage of these things like Google surveys and all. And this audience or this group of people that I want to reach out to, we have very easy access to them, alhamdulillah. So this is what I'm hoping to do, is be able to survey them and then to analyze the data and figure out um, figure out or rather get the answers to the questions that I raised before. In terms of that's in terms of methodology. I've not had a chance to really work on the literature review, the significance of the research, or what Dr. Zaliha described as chapterization. I wanted to ask Professor Bargut in terms of how to do a literature review. I have a bit of a challenge there, and after my presentation, I will ask you a few questions about that. I've got a work plan in place, a Gantt chart, so to say, and it goes from September, inshallah, hoping to complete everything by mid to end of 2023 next year. So I've divided it up into the different stages of the project, and then I've got a bibliography, resources that I need, and a bibliography as far as the proposal is concerned. So that's how I put together my proposal. Um, I do have a couple of questions, and I'm hoping that you all, brothers and sisters, and our professor can enlighten me on what I've done. Barakallah fi. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Your mic is off, Prof.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes, yes, sir.
Can?
Yes, yes, sir.
Assalamu alaikum.
Yes, yes.
Okay. Yeah, thank you, Brother Muhammad, for this presentation. We have heard a lot of good things. I wanted just to see if there is any of our student here has any comment on what Brother Muhammad has mentioned regarding his topic, and what is your reaction and what advice you want to give to Brother Muhammad on this topic. Brother Zulfiqar, go ahead. Yeah.
Muhammad, congratulations on delivering a very good presentation. It's very clear and very well presented. I think it's a very important topic, and based on our previous discussions, it's a very new area, isn't it? There's not much available on it, not much literature, not much data, etc. So I think it's going to be an interesting journey for you to collect all of that data. That's number one. And number two, I think you have excellent research questions, but I think there's too many sub questions. You know, that's what I felt when you're going through the research questions. You have 4 main ones, and then you have lots of sub questions. So, yeah, that's my view so far.
Thank
Yeah.
you, brother.
Right.
Thank you, brother Muhammad Zulfiqar. Okay, that's a good comment. Now, okay, let's just for the sake of time, we wanted just to see number one. I think, brother Muhammad, the topic you choose is that's what we call in research methodology something researchable. Researchable means is an area which really has a gap to fill up, an area which is new, number one, and researchable means we can do research in this area and explore and try to understand this phenomenon of conversion and the challenges it brings with it. The challenges it brings with it, and how do we solve these challenges for the future so that we create a better approach of handling this phenomenon. When I say we create a better integrated approach or method of dealing with this phenomenon means we need to look at it before and when it happens and after, means pre-conversion, conversion, and post-conversion, so that we create and propose an approach and a guide kind of not maybe a manual or a guidebook on handling the phenomena of conversion. But that guidebook or that approach which we wanted to come up with is all based on, they call it data or evidence-based. And unfortunately, you have with you a rich legacy, a rich environment where you can do interviews, whether focus or individual, all types. I think this gives value and adds value to your research because you have already the community living with you. You become like an anthropologist, living with the people who are suffering this and who are taking this process and journey. And in fact, one of the objectives maybe of your research, why you want to do this research, why do you want to do this research, is in the end to come up with that approach, to come up with that integrated approach or method of dealing with the phenomena of conversion
Women University.
in the pre-conversion and then post-conversion. Your thesis telling the people how to handle it as Islam wants it. Okay, so I believe the topic is good. I don't want to comment on the title. Later on you will change it. Later on you will refine it. Okay, because the more you read of literature review, whether in the books or articles or thesis, the better you articulate yourself and your topic. So let's say in general the topic is very good, the area of focus is very good. The way how you put the question and objective will be refined, okay? Because this is just a kind of a preliminary impressions from yourself based on your own experience, your own readings. But when you start studying some books and theses and articles which did some kind of research in this area, whether from general da'wah perspective or maybe the historical perspective of conversion in Islam and how it was handled also before, because Islam, millions of people convert to Islam. We can go back to the Sunnah of Rasulullah, to the Manhaj of Rasulullah. We can go back to the Quran and in fact discover the principles of the methodology of Islam and the phases of that methodology of Islam. Do you think Islam, all this great religion, all this great prophet, will ask people to convert without making the necessary arrangement, the communal, the psychological, the social, the educational, the economic, for the people to find the support? You know why? Because what you are trying to tell us is the support system for this is almost in some places zero. That's why people leave the place. That's why people they find, what's this? What am I doing here? Neither Muslim helping me nor my own previous community also. So I think all what I'm saying to tell you that the topic is a very good topic and needed. It's very it's something needed to address it academically, scientifically, and that's what we will help you to do. Because we move from the perspectives of da'wah and the daily dealing with this into an academic thinking about it as a phenomenon which needs study. That's why I said the title itself later will be revised to suit this academic kind of a framework, because you put a lot of keywords. Talk about education, talk about conversion, talk about people, talk about the method, talk about all these things now need to be operationalized so that we see what is needed, what is not needed. We need to focus, because here what you put is like a lot of things. So we need to start thinking what is relevant, what is not relevant, what we can include in our PhD thesis and what we can do later as books or articles that we can do by ourselves. Because as you are all aware, when you want to identify a topic for a PhD, you need to identify, that's what I call statement of the problem. Statement of the problem. You have to identify a clear focus so that you will not scatter yourself. You will not do and deal with many things at one time. Many things at one time. Because the concept, the key concept you brought, each one of them can be by itself a topic. You know, when you talk about educating the convert, this one itself is an area which needs methods, approaches, efforts, means, wasa'il, and so on and so forth. So if you want to take the education of the convert, and even inside the education, you might talk only about the suitable approach. What approach is suitable for them post-conversion or pre-conversion, and so on and so forth. So we need now, after you really got this good idea, good concept, good perspective about the topic, which is researchable. And also I notice you love the topic, you like the topic, because it's part and parcel of your life, of your work, of your mission in life. And you want to end up in your life having a legacy here. And that's one of the second important elements of selecting a topic in academic research. Number one is the researchable. It means still there are areas to be researched, not already done by other people. Number two is raghba. Raghba. You like the topic. Don't do a topic which you don't like. Don't do a topic which is imposed on you. Don't do a topic which is not growing and living with you and it's in your daily thoughts and feelings. So any one of you, don't do topics which you don't like, or you don't wish to work on it because of many reasons. First, it's imposed by a supervisor. Number two, you don't have interest in it. Interest. That's, you show that you have a researchable topic, you have an interest in it, and you like it. That's very good. Now, continue giving you some guidelines here. So I want you now to go back and re-look into all these very many aspects that you brought. You know the key terms which you bring. Now you go back home and put them into, you use mind map. You know mind map, when you start drawing the mind map, I want you to put all this, each one of them, put it in a circle. Educating of conversion, pre-conversion, post-conversion, conversion itself, ways of doing it, requirement, perception of people about it, how it is managed. You put them all, each one of this, put in a circle, and start asking yourself which one is linked to which, and which one creates a grouping which looks like interrelated, which I can take. Then you start asking yourself, yeah, can I just focus on conversion, the issue of conversion itself, or I better focus on post-conversion, or post-conversion immediately, because that one raises questions, raises a lot of problems about the well-being. Well, now I give you another word, well-being. The well-being of the converts. Okay, the well-being of the issue is not just come to Islam. The issue is the journey. You know, coming to Islam, many people, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put light in a person, 1 minute is there. But where is the communal Islamic system, or environment, or ecosystem? Now I give you another word, ecosystem. The ecosystem which will link all your concepts, all your ideas in one place. What kind of an ecosystem you need to manage? I give you another word, manage, to manage the conversion process. So an ecosystem will need to identify the stakeholders. Another concept, stakeholders. Who are the stakeholders? The person himself who convert, the Muslim community, the Muslim institutions, the da'wah institutions, the government, the community of the convert himself, the Muslim ummah in general. So, yeah, there are many things. Okay, so when you start thinking like this, and putting network of meanings, trying to analyze the concepts, the points, and then From there, you start rebuilding and identifying what you really wanted to do. Why I'm saying this, because I want to show you that there is no need to do in your PhD, as a PhD, just for a period of 3 years, to do many things. To do many things means you need to be very focused. But of course, in your mind, you know that bigger picture. You know that bigger picture. But here in my PhD, I want to study, for example, what is the best ecosystem or the best approach to handle and manage and govern this conversion process. Okay, are there literature or people or institution who have this type of knowledge today? Do they have how to govern the convert, how to manage the life and the conversion, how to deal with it, or we don't have? Have you tried to visit Darul Arqam in Singapore, for example?
Yes,
Have you heard about their approach and their way and the ecosystem
I've
they
worked. Yeah, I
created?
worked with them.
You visited them.
I also worked with them. I've taught
Okay,
them.
so what do you think in their? What do you see? Okay, what do you see in their approach? What is good and what is missing?
Agreed.
So that
Agreed, yeah.
we start looking at what is already there, what is already good that we can capitalize on, and what is the missing link in all this. Then your thesis come in and say, okay, I'm going to do this now. I saw that there are scattered approaches here and there. There are this institution is doing this in Malaysia, in South Africa, US, in these parts, but I did not find an integrated approach or an integrated ecosystem that includes all the required elements in dealing with the phenomena of the converts. Take it as a phenomenon, not just as something people convert. No, you study it. You study it, and I think your theoretical framework later on will help you to develop the conceptual framework. What is your conceptual framework? When you start identifying, I think your first chapter should be the conceptual framework. After the khutta, after the proposal, the first chapter will deal with conceptual framework and operational concepts of your thesis. In this conceptual framework, we will talk about da'wah, about conversion, about what Quran say, about what Islam say, about how this phenomena happened in the history of Islam, what Muslims, what are the conditions, what are the principles put by the Muslims before us to handle and deal with this phenomenon, so that we create a kind of a conceptual framework, and then in the end of your conceptual framework, you will define the concepts, the terms, you will put the model or the approach which you will follow, and then in the end you say, I am trying to propose this ecosystem that is based on 6 elements that need to be there in handling the conversion of people. These 6 elements, for example, then chapter 2, chapter 3, chapter 4, chapter 5 will be dealing with all this type of things. So I'm just speaking this way to tell each and every student, when you come to do your start thinking about your topic, the first thing is try to identify this researchable topic which you have interest in and which you like and love, and then you need to be focused. Don't scatter your mind with too many things, too many concepts, too many keywords. Because in the case of Muhammad, even one key concept, which is education of the converts, is more than enough to do a PhD there. Brother Muhammad, are you with me?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
I've been writing everything down. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
So now I saw that you put. I have comments on the title, but I will not. I will discuss with you later, one by one. I will discuss with you
Inshallah.
later on, one by one, and I will guide you on this one. But I see in the title, and also I see your objective. I see your questions. All need to be refined, but we will refine it only. We will refine it only when you help me with two things. You help me with two things.
Okay.
Number one, I want you to get one literature review. One literature review. An article, a book, a thesis done on this issue of conversion, whether in Islam or in Christianity. I am sure the Christians wrote thousands of books and articles and guidebooks on conversion and how they manage it from A to Z. Just Google. You just put managing conversion to Christianity. You will see how many articles, how many guidebooks, how many. But you go and do it in Islam, you will find a lot of books of da'wah. You will find a lot of books talking about da'wah, wasailu da'wah, manahiju da'wah, but conversion as a thing. Because, Brother Muhammad, what I want you to do, I want you to do a very deep work that can have impact in the future. Because I give you another aspect. You might think about it. You know, brother, conversion in a multiracial society like Malaysia or US or other countries is very different when there is a conversion in a Muslim society, 100% Muslims.
True.
Okay?
Very true.
When people convert in Saudi Arabia, it's different when they convert in Singapore. And when they convert in Malaysia here. The context, the situation, the laws, the regulation, the policies, the culture, the relations, the intercultural relations among the ethnicities, the religions, the sensitivities are all having impact on what we want to study. So, Brother Muhammad, I think what you are doing now is good, is important, is great. You go on. I want you now, the next step is read one book or article or thesis on conversion to Islam or conversion to Christianity. I want you just to see how much the Christians done to build a big ecosystem, how they manage their people from A to Z. Okay, so that we can also learn from the new way, because what I want you in the end to give us in your thesis, that's what my thinking about your thesis is, to provide to the ummah an approach or a proposed way or approach how to manage this conversion in its three phases: pre, the conversion,
During,
and the post. I want that approach.
Yeah.
I want that
Inshallah.
method, and we base it on Quran, Sunnah, the experience of the Ummah in the whole history from Andalusia to Baghdad to Samarkand. This is just one chapter. We will follow up the historical, how it was done in Andalusia, in Spain, and all this. And then we come now to your Bahrain as a model, as a field where we can develop the new principles, the new guidelines, the new steps and processes of how we manage it. So we give it to the people in the future. When you publish it as a book, people will get and know how to handle the conversion, so that when the converters themselves, before they convert, read your book of the future, they will be happy and they know what is the roadmap. They know what are the challenges. They know. And also the institutions handling this, they need to improve themselves so that your thesis will tell the da'wah institution that's what you should do. The civil society, that's what you need to do to help the convert, so that these converts in the future, when they come to us, they come smoothly and they enter this world of Islam smoothly with aqidah, with tarbiyah, and also later on I will try to help you to see whether you can look at the conversion from the perspective of maqasid sharia, which is a more open, flexible model that can solve the issues of the converts than the approach of the rigid approach. You don't do hijab, don't come. You don't do this, don't come. You don't do this, haram. You don't do this. All this is wrong in Islam.
Yeah,
Is wrong in
absolutely.
Islam. Islam
Yep.
is rahmatan lil alameen. Islam is a different manhaj. Do you read Arabic or you don't read? Do you read in Arabic, Brother Muhammad?
50%.
Okay. I have a book. I have a book, but it's in Arabic. It's a textbook in UIE here for the student of Usuluddin and Dawah. The book is called Methods of Dawah in a multiracial society. I will give you a copy of it. Unfortunately, it's still in Arabic. I did not write it in English at that time. I was teaching da'wah and methods of da'wah in Arabic, so I wrote it in Arabic for the student. But anyway, so this is my first comment to you. I will give you only one comment today. That's my comment to what you presented. Okay, it's like 12 13 minutes comment to you and also to all other brothers, so that they can focus, they can deepen their thinking, they can understand, they can start identifying the topic. So Brother Muhammad, I will discuss with you once you identify an article or a book or a thesis on conversion and managing people coming to Islam or to Christianity, what are the needed things, how we should handle it, what we should observe in this phase, in that. I want you to understand this phenomena. You look like you are managing because you are already a manager and you have a dawah institution, means you are the person who should be telling people about governance, about management. Not the da'i who is in the mosque, not the khatib who is in the mosque. The khatib can talk about da'wah, can talk about akhlaq, about values, about manhaj of Rasul, but you talk about how we manage. And that's what is missing. That's why I say your topic is researchable. Agree, Muhammad?
Absolutely, 100% agree.
You got some wisdom this
absolutely.
morning, this evening?
Alhamdulillah, a lot.
Okay, so I will keep in touch with you. I need you no worries. You can do it. I'm sure. I'm very impressed with your experience and your field of work. And you are now an anthropologist of da'wah. A new concept.
Inshallah.
And you are not a da'i. You are an anthropology, means you put culture with da'wah. And now you will manage this. So I want your thesis to be something different. Something like the
Inshallah.
Muqaddimah of Ibn Khaldun. علم العمران. You know علم العمران Ibn Khaldun? This is علم conversion of Muhammad Qadir.
Inshallah.
Think this
Inshallah.
way. Read
Inshallah.
more, read a lot, but I will just wait for you, maybe 2 weeks, 3 weeks. You do some survey on the conversion, particularly in the Christian side. You can see how they handle, how they manage, how they prepare everything in order. Many institutions ready, many things are ready. The ecosystem is fully ready. But for us, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guide these people to come to us, and unfortunately in many places they don't find and you mentioned the challenges, so we will inshallah work on it. Okay, I move very quickly.
Sure.
Go ahead, tell us what do you have.
Okay. Assalamu alaikum.
Professor, I have one question, if you
Yeah,
don't
go
mind.
ahead, go ahead.
Yeah, the one challenge, and I think maybe many of the other students face the same challenge. We had asked Professor Zaliha about this, is our access to online resources through ISTAC library. So many times we're doing the online research because we're in different parts of the world, and we use Google Scholar or other means of research, and then we get stuck because we're not able to get, we only get the abstract, we're not able to get the actual articles. So
Okay,
could you help us
okay.
facilitate
I will
this,
talk
please?
to. I thought this one already sorted out last time when I talked in your WhatsApp group, and the head of library said that you can access and we can help you. You remember all those things?
I'm,
Are you in
I,
our this PG
I am in
the PG WhatsApp
I
group
am,
of ISTAC?
I am in a group, but I've not seen any of this. Maybe I'm not in that group. I have no idea.
Yeah, maybe the new
Brother
one, because
Zulfikar,
when I
others, anybody?
No, I
because when I
remember.
came.
I remember Professor Zaliha saying she's going to organize a special class between the librarian and just our group.
Yes, that's
Yeah.
what we, but we have not come across other stuff. Yeah.
Because there are two WhatsApp group of postgraduate. The old one before I came in, it's already there. But when I came in, I created one. I think Brother Syed Iftiqar is there,
Yes.
and maybe some others are
Yes,
there.
yes, I am.
And in
Yeah,
that
I'm
one, in that one, I talked to
Yes.
the chief librarian, the deputy dean academic, and all
Yes,
of them
yes, yes,
to
of course.
facilitate for you the library. And now I will talk to them, and we will revert to you quickly. Okay,
Please. Yeah.
we will inform you about, because at that time he was saying that our student can access and we can help
Yes.
them, and we can
Yes.
even can borrow for them even books from outside if they want.
Please. That would
So
be
I
very
will just
useful.
link you to them, or what I'm going to do, I call all the postgraduate student to have a meeting with a virtual meeting with the head of library,
Yes,
and
yes.
tell him what do you want and what books, and I will be there. Okay,
Excellent.
Zulfikar,
That would be
go
great.
ahead.
That would be great. Yeah.
Can you see my screen?
Yes, yes.
Yes.
Is it full screen now?
Yes, yes.
Yes.
We see the end of an age.
Yes.
The last man.
Okay, so my title is a working title. I'm still not 100% sure on it, but I've titled it The End of an Age and the Last Man. When I talk about end of an age, I mean that we have come to the end of a historical cycle. And as a result, in this last stage of the historical cycle, a particular type of psychology emerges in man. And I call this the last man. In fact, I've taken it from Nietzsche, which I'll talk about a bit later on. And as the subtitle, I've put an alternative method of perceiving and evaluating contemporary society and the psyche. Because the method that's been used, let's say from Descartes to today, has actually led to tragedy. Because we've been looking at events, we've been making sense of the self, only using what is called instrumental rationality, which I will talk about a bit later on. But what I'm trying to say is that the human being is more complex than that. We're complex creatures, and we have to take those levels of experience in order to make sense of what's going on in the world and ourselves. So that's the working title. And by the way, this is a piece of art. My entire thesis, if you like, is contained in this piece of art. It's an artistic representation of our time. It's by a brilliant artist named Max Ernst, who belonged to an artistic movement in Paris and Germany in the 20s. They were known as the realists. They were very interesting, very, very interesting group of people. Okay, let's move on. Why am I doing this thesis? Why did I decide to write it? Well, I've been teaching for 17 years in England, Paris, Cape Town, a little bit in Kuala Lumpur, and obviously now in Istanbul. And I teach 18 to 24-year-old students, mainly. And the most popular question that I've been asked in my 17 years of teaching is, how can I make sense of what is going on in the world and within myself? This is the most popular question that I've been asked. So this triggered this particular question, then played on my mind a lot. In fact, it started 6 years ago, and I've thought about it a lot. So I decided that the young people today don't have a theoretical framework or a model to understand what's going on in the world or in themselves. Meaning they don't know how to analyze events, analyze society, and how society corresponds to the self. Because, like I've said it many times before, society is a mirror to us, and we are a mirror to society. In fact, one of the first people in the West who spoke about this was Plato in his Republic. But this is something that hasn't really been developed. So that's why I decided to write this proposal. The other reason why I decided to write this proposal, or want to do this proposal, is because of a verse in the Quran that I read a very long time ago. It's a very short verse, but I think my thesis ties into it very well. The verse in the Quran is, there's lots of different translations, but Allah the Majestic says, every nation or community has its term. So every nation has its beginning, has its zenith, and it has its collapse, or decay and collapse. So this sort of ties into my thesis. So both this question and the Quranic ayat have informed this particular thesis. And just a side comment for Muhammad Qadir, one of the reasons why many people are taking the Shahada is probably, one of the explanations is probably contained in this thesis, so there's something to think about. So there's a link between both of our work. Maybe we should write a book together, who knows. Okay, introduction. A unitary method of making sense of the self and society. This is a key word in my for my thesis. Unitary method. Since the 1800s, knowledge has been specialized and fragmented. Therefore, people look at the world to make sense of the world and themselves in very compartmentalized ways, right? They don't see everything as a whole. And this is something that I've been taught to think like, and something that I think is missing within a modern education. So unitary method, and this is also something in Islam. I think that my pronunciation is very bad of Arabic, so please do forgive me. There's a word in Arabic where it's called rububiyah. Is that right, Professor?
Correct. Yeah.
Where everything is
Yes.
interconnected. So what happens here can affect there. And Allah is obviously the Lord of this rububiyah. So unitary method. You also find this unitary method in the ancient Greek and Roman culture. So look at people like Polybius or Tacitus or Thucydides or Homer or Seneca, Machiavelli, Shakespeare. These people looked at the world like this, right? And it's also within the Islamic tradition. But this worldview, this unitary method, was then rejected by the scientific enlightenment and, in fact, the Industrial Revolution as well. There was a whole debate in the 17th century in Europe. It's the ancient versus the moderns. How do we make sense? What's the most effective way of making sense of the self and of the world? Okay, So my thesis this proposed thesis will argue the following points: that history is not, in fact, perpetually progressing and linear as proposed by the modern Enlightenment thinking, but cyclical. Again, from the Enlightenment to today, there's this idea that history is progressing, that society is perpetually progressing, right? And what we have now is much better than before. And according to one academic named Francis Fukuyama, we reached the end of history because we have the best political system, democracy, the best ideology, liberalism, and the best economic system, which is capitalism. So I'm saying, no, there's something else that you need to take into consideration, right? History is not perpetually progressing, but it's cyclical. There are cycles in history, right? And from an Islamic perspective, I say that history does have a direction, that the direction is towards the Day of Judgment. But there are cycles in that linear form of history. And again, who was it? The great Ibn Khaldun, who's known as the last great Greek of Europe, because he continued on that tradition and developed it in a more sophisticated manner. He also talked about the idea of cyclicality of history. Okay, and I also argue that we have not reached the end of history, but an end of a cycle in history. The above mentioned cycle follows similar contours at historical age and is characterized by societal decay or corruption. Very important keyword. Corruption. I'm not talking about bribes. I'm talking about a general corruption, a general decay, a general degeneration. And as a result, this it's a particular type in the body. In fact, there was a very good movie that illustrates this last man psychology. It's one of my favorite movies. It's called Fight. If you look at the beginning of the movie, Edward Norton, by the way, who's nameless, very interesting. He is the last man, right? He is in the 9 to 5, the boring corporate job, IKEA boy, consistently consuming, can't feel, very important, he can't feel. That's why he goes to all these different meetings in the evening, Alcoholics Anonymous, testicular cancer meetings and so on, because he wants to feel. So part of the last man is numb, calm existence and no way to move forward. And if they wanted to move forward, they wouldn't know how to. This is very important, the know-how. Okay, so for the cyclicality of history, I will use the work of ancient Greek thinker, philosopher, historian, wrote approximately 100 years before Isa alayhi salam, and his name was Polybius. I like his model because it's a full, mature, well thought out model. Compare his model to Ibn Khaldun. It's more mature, I would say. That's a reflection of the time that they were living in. Like if you look at Ibn Khaldun, he focuses on, say, monarchy to tyranny, right? But Polybius, he starts with monarchy and he ends with autocracy, and I'm going to show you the model shortly. But also Polybius took all of the different strands of thinking associated with the cyclicality of history from the ancient Greeks. He amalgamated the highest of that thinking. And I also found out as well recently, I'm not too sure how true this is, but there was a lot of no, in fact I won't say it. I'll say it after the lesson, or else I'll just digress. Okay, so for Polybius, for the young person who's going to read this, or for me to explain it to them, Polybius' theory will act as a framework to identify the current position in the unfolding of history. The young person will say, okay, after knowing Polybius' model, this is where I was before, this is where we came from, right, in history. This is where we are now, and we know what's happened in the future. Very important. Both Ibn Khaldun and Machiavelli spoke about the importance of understanding the time in which you live. Very important. I think the word in Malay is zaman, is that right? The time, understand the time. Once you understand what's going on in society, you understand the zaman, the time, you understand the movements from a tectonic level, right? That are happening in the unseen, then you can act intelligently and strategically. Again, it's all to do with seeing, this idea of seeing and evaluating. We need a new way. But first, we have to deal with history. How is history unfolding?
Brother
Okay.
Zulfiqar, can we just see some of your questions so that we
Yes.
can...
Okay, I'm just going to
directly
read this and I'm going to go to the questions. I won't spend too long on this. Okay, for the idea of societal decay, I'm going to use the work of Adam Ferguson. Ferguson was a Scottish Enlightenment thinker, and he was writing at a time when capitalism, liberalism, and democracy were coming together. So he was one of the first ones to write about the idea of societal decay. And he was an anti-enlightenment. He was very good friends with Adam Smith and Hume and people like that. So anyway, so his work is, we're going to understand societal decay. And then lastly, I'm going to argue that this type of society, this type of societal decay creates the last man. And we're going to use Nietzsche for that. All right, questions and objectives. Can you still see the
Yeah.
PowerPoint?
Yes.
Okay. Key questions. Does history unfold in a cyclical rhythm or in a linear progressive direction? Number 2, does a liberal democratic capitalist system or value system, as opposed to the one of virtue, which in Arabic means fatwa, act as a significant driver to societal decay or corruption? So I'm looking at capitalist values. Number 3, has history reached its end with the triumph and progressive nature of technocratic, liberal, democratic capitalism? Number 4, does a technocratic, liberal, democratic capitalism forge or shape a better or contented human being? According to a lot of the present contemporary social scientists and commentators, they would say yes to the last one. Objectives: to demonstrate that history is unfolding in a cyclical manner as opposed to just linear progressive. Number 2, to demonstrate the variables responsible for societal corruption as opposed to progress. So I'm going to identify some of the variables that are responsible for this. Number 3, to analyze the end of history discourse in relation to the condition society finds itself in right now. And number 4, to demonstrate that a technocratic, liberal, democratic, capitalist society forges a particular psyche detrimental to the human being. Again, that's with the last man. Let's move on. Okay, here are the key concepts now that I'm going to use, and I'm going to interlink them like Professor said. I'm going to a mind map. Key concepts: history as cyclical, linear history, something called a technocratic, liberal, democratic capitalism. What is that? It's a society heavily shaped by and run by technology, right? So just think about algorithms now, think about electronic currencies and so on, the social media and so on. This idea of progress, is it all in progress? Scientifically, technologically, yes. But from a human perspective, no. But that says a lot about human nature. Societal corruption or decay, Nietzsche's last man, nihilism, which is, I think, the spirit or the zeitgeist of our age. Nihilism, especially in Europe and the United States. Technocratic rationality, the computational mind. So one of the aspects of the last man, being the last man, is as a result of the popular way that cognitive psychologists
सिर्फ
view the
इस्लामियात
mind, the human mind, they see it as a computer. Therefore, a technocratic rationality is used in order to continue the
नहीं वो तो
capitalist
मैं तो यहाँ
society.
टीचर हूँ आप
Very
तशरीफ
important.
लाएंगे इन्फॉर्मेशन
And last one, alienation.
वो आपको बताएंगे
Um,
पैकेज वगैरह से
This is a key problem, and as we know, alienation has led to a lot of what they call pathological illnesses.
बस ये एडमिशन में अगले महीने से अगले महीने
Okay, so just quickly with with the historical realm, I mentioned
एडमिशन को
Polybius.
आप आ जाएं किसी भी
As
दिन
a
पता कर
counter
लें
argument to Polybius, to balance out my argument, my thesis, I'm going to use the
हाँ,
work
चलो
of
मैं-
J.B. Burry. And he wrote a very interesting book on
जी, जी,
history
मैं-
as linear. And he's using lots of different authors who are against the idea of cyclical history. So Polybius versus J.B. Burry. And by the way, when I talk about Polybius, I'm going to give examples as well, to show how the cycle has played out again and again and again. Okay, so for the societal decay or societal corruption, the overall framework is from Adam Ferguson. Then I'm going to use 3 contemporary scholars who look at different aspects or elements of societal corruption. There's a woman named Professor Camila Vergara from Chile. She writes about systemic corruption. So how is corruption enacted from a democratic perspective? Is there something in the democratic system? Is there a seed in the democratic system that allows it to decay? She's looking at systemic corruption. Number 2, civic corruption. I believe that liberalism is one of the major variables or motors or engines for societal decay, because it has created what we might call the a radical individualism or narcissism, which has led us away from the civic zone, from civic participation, and so on. So I'm going to use the work by Patrick Deneen. He wrote Why Liberalism Failed. He's a brilliant professor in Paris. And number 3, individual corruption. This is moral corruption. And I'm talking about Epicureanism. I'm talking about and hedonism mainly when it comes to individual corruption. And I'm going to use a work by Benjamin Wykes. It's actually a very good, very, very interesting book. But he's focusing on Europe and the United States. And the reason why I'm focusing on that is because I am from there. So I have a very close relationship with what's going on there. All right, so for the last part of the thesis of the individual, it's Nietzsche's philosophy, kitab or book called Thus Spoke Zarathustra. He gave a brilliant critique on capitalism, on what happened to Western values, on democracy as well, and nihilism. He was one of the first ones to write about this disease called nihilism. So with the last man, 3 elements that make up the last man today, and I'm using 3 different contemporary scholars. The technocratic rationality, so the last man has this technocratic rationality, meaning he only looks at existence from one perspective. It's right. And again, I'm going to focus on why, and this is the computational mind. There's a brilliant work by Jeffrey Evans where he looks at psychology and nihilism. Fantastic work. Number 2, another element that is keeping the last man a last man is debt from a national and public and private perspective. We can no longer fulfill our passion. We can no longer fulfill our authentic selves. We can no longer manifest it in many ways because of the burden of debt that we're under, which is forcing us to do things that we don't want to do, right? In order to pay this debt, private and public. A brilliant Italian author here, Maurizio Lazzarato, he wrote a very good book called Indebted Man. And he looks at how the debt and debtor relationship is used by accredited to control the masses. And I'm looking at, I'm talking about the whole monetary system here. Number 3, alienated man. Looking at the psychology in a bit more detail, alienation as mental illness, and I'm going to use an Iranian author here, and his name is Kambiz Sakai, and I really like his work. The counter arguments now. The counter arguments to The Last Man is an interesting book written by Professor Steven Pinker. He's a cognitive psychologist, and he wrote a book called Enlightenment Now, saying that we have perpetually progressed and human nature has progressed, right? Ever since the Enlightenment. And he's saying that if we want to progress more, we have to go back to the Enlightenment thinking, Enlightenment principles. He also wrote another book called Better Angels, looking at how the human being has evolved, and according to him, more ethically, and so on. And there's another book I'm going to use to counteract Nietzsche, Last Man, and what I say, and it's by Moore, and it's a book called It's Getting Better All the Time. So it's looking at how society and the individual have progressed in a very positive way. Okay, I nearly finished. Now this is where I get a bit stuck now, because when I presented this last time, I said I'm going to offer a solution. And my solution, without going into it here, my solution is basically that in times of decay, right? In fact, even in times of the zenith, when a society is at the zenith, what can keep us content and safe and sane and healthy is the idea of community or belonging to a group, right? And there is a pattern, a prophetic pattern that's found in the Quran, and it's the pattern of Isa alayhi salam with his 12 disciples. It's a pattern of Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam with the men, the 10 best men, who promised paradise, who promised the garden. So this pattern is very important, and I think if it's implemented in today's time, it'll be like a lifeboat for you. So you'll be floating through life like that, whether the sea is stormy or whether it's still. That boat, that raft, is something that will protect you. And also, when there's a group that come together, and Ibn Khaldun speaks about this, there's an energy that builds up when they come together. And at one point, it bursts out into society and it revitalizes society, whether in terms in regards to scholarship, in industry or whatever. The story in the Quran that I think that communities should live by today is the story of the sleepers of the cave, Surah Kahf. In times of tyranny, they retreated into the cave, they were together and they called upon Allah for guidance. Now I'm using this metaphorically that we should have our own caves, our own boats. Istak could be a cave. Muhammad Qadir's organization is a cave in that aspect. But when we come together, something happens. And in history, all of the great cities of the past have always begun like this. Just a small group of people coming together, and then something amazing and wonderful happens. So Sleepers of the Cave, which is the sort of mythical pattern. And I use mythical in a non-Christian of the... Okay, so I'm not too sure whether I should put that in, because I want to offer a solution, what I think a solution should be, but then I think the thesis may be too wide, it may be too much for me to write. So that is my...
Okay.
That is my presentation.
Okay, Brother Zulfiqar, mashallah, very good. This is also a good topic because for the sake of time, I'm just giving you general comments here. Later on, I'm not sure whether you have introduced this to Prof. Osman. You said that Prof. Osman will be your supervisor, or if I'm not mistaken. Have you discussed with him this?
Yes, I've discussed it with him, but I've changed it over the last few weeks, and I've just finished writing the... So I'm going to send it to him. I'm going to see
Okay,
what he says.
what you presented here is not a proposal. It's just you have a full proposal of this.
Yes, I've got a full.
Have you done the literature review?
Literature review, yep. The significance of the study, bibliography.
No, I mean literature review itself. You done that?
Yes.
How many pages you write in the literature review?
Let me just double check now.
Okay, no problem. No problem.
Yeah.
Links, starting from the title down to the objective and the questions, all will be changed, but you yourself will change it. Okay, because the more you learn, the more you go for a good literature review, you will understand the gap, because some of the things that you mentioned already there are many studies about them, so you don't need to repeat yourself. Okay, for example, when you talk about the cyclical movement of civilization or the cyclical interpretation of history, you have from the Islamic perspective and you have from the Western perspective. You have, like you mentioned, Ibn Khaldun. You have Malik ibn Nabi, who has a very huge theory on the cyclical movement of civilization, using the using the new approaches of human science, social science, and so on and so forth. You go to the West, you have Twimby, you have Wimby, and all this, and then you come to them. What is important is the focus. What do you want? The cyclical movement of civilization, and then you do a comparative analysis between the West and Islamic, for example, and you talk about Ibn Khaldun as a model here and Adam Ferguson as another model over there, or you want to study within the Western spectrum and cultural world, you study the idea of the cyclical movement and its significance in understanding this concept of last man. Yeah, last man, the end of state, the end of man, the end of society, the end of meaning, the end of technology, the end of this. Whether you wanted to study it within the Western context, or you select some of the scholars who are well versed and they have models in interpreting this idea of the cyclical movement and also the idea of the last man, or you wanted to compare two different models, which is the Islamic and the Western, and then you select the scholars, or you wanted to look at this Western conceptualization of the end of man, the last man, or the cycle of civilization from a Quranic perspective. So all this will change the way how you articulate the topic, because here you put too much of ideas and concepts from different perspectives. Even this Adam Ferguson himself is a phenomenon. Is a very sophisticated model in dealing with his own context and time and all this. So, brother Zulfiqar, we need. I think it looks like you have a lot of readings, a lot of literature. As we are not going to write a book, we are going to write a thesis, okay? Because if you want to write a book, in these areas you can put a lot and from different perspective and this, and we talk about the psychic, we talk about the epistemology, we talk about the soul, but when it comes to articulating something as an issue for a PhD, we need to identify a situation, an issue. What is the what bothers you about the concept of last
Okay,
man?
it's
What bothers you about the concept of the cyclical movement of civilization? Why don't you start from this key of the cyclical interpretation of history, and how, for example, religion plays a role in the cyclical interpretation of civilization? Then, in this context, in this way, you narrow down the scope. We are talking about religion and how this religious factor can help understand the cycle of civilization. And from there, when you go to the analysis inside the thesis, you can talk about different opinions who are relevant. Ferguson or Ibn Khaldun or Malik bin Nabi or Arnold Twindi, or you can bring them as arguments to achieve what you wanted to achieve when you want to explain the phenomena of the cyclical interpretation of history. Because in this current situation of what you wrote is too huge and too multi layers of the statement of the problem and also the objective. So I want you to sit down and then think and talk to yourself and say, okay, in my PhD here, yeah, I am fond of this concept of the last man, concept of last man in this Western context. Why the Western reach these ends? Why? What is missing, or what makes them, Fukuyama or any other one, to do something, you need really to focus. So I will be from here you communicate with me, and then we will start trying to identify what is the main focus that we wanted to take from all what you brought today to us, which is really something very huge and big. But usually in PhDs, there is a need to focus, because here your topic will take us to epistemology, to psychology, to culture, to the Western, lot of Western inputs, and also you brought the Islamic, you brought the Quran, you brought all this. So we need just to find now the starting point. Why don't you focus on the concept of last man? Okay, the concept of last man as a key concept, and from that concept we build our narrative of the questions, the objective, and we will move forward, inshallah. So because the West really has a problem with this idea of the last man, the end of, from Fukuyama or before or after, or they have this idea they are the center of the world, and when they are shaken, they start talking about the ends, the end, and then I believe, with you studying the concept of the last man in the critically in this Western context, and bringing the concept of Khilafah or vicegerent, the concept of vicegerent of Allah as articulated by the Quran, you will give a great answer to the Western model, to the Western approach, because the Islam, also the Quran, stands for the cyclical movement, but the cyclical movement which is based on values and ethics and guided way of looking at civilization and history. So the concept of last man and the concept of Khalifatullah, this concept, if you do a kind of an analysis of both of them, I think you can do wonders in re-articulating the Islamic approach of the cyclical movement of civilization and how we look at man from the beginning until the end. So, Brother Iftikhar, I think you try to start thinking about what I'm saying here, the concept of last man and the concept of Khalifatullah. As two,
Professor, that's really
as two key concepts that they will help you create a narrative of what you want to tell or what you want to come up with. Because for sure, the concept of Khalifatullah will take you to the Quran, the Sunnah, Ibn Khaldun, Malik Nabi. The concept of last man will take you to Fukuyama, Arnold Toynbee, Ferguson, and all these guys you want to talk about. But when you do it this way, you are clear. You are clear, and you see what model the Quran proposes to understand history and civilization and the cycle, and what these guys, with their concept of end of man and the last man, telling the world. I leave it at this point because it's already 7 o'clock, almost 7. But this is just because I see that you have a huge and all these are good sign of you producing, inshallah, good work. You need just good guidance, good facilitation from the supervisors, and then you can do very good. But to me, studying the concept of is something different thought and the Islamic thought, and give us the model you want to tell in the end, and you see how philosophy of history and civilization deeply entrenched and in deeply in the Islamic value of thinking. Brothers
Okay,
and
thank you
sisters,
so much,
this is a
Professor.
very good day. This is a very good day. And even though I didn't give you any practical I was about to give you some skills how you prepare your literature review practically, but unfortunately the time is gone. I have another thing at 7. But the two presentation today telling us a lot about our student in ISTAC. Very good. I hope all the students take up these challenges, and we will help you to articulate them in a PhD context. The supervisor will help you, the examiners later on in the curriculum will help you, but you will do it inshallah. So brother Iftikhar, I think you have to sleep over these two concepts, last man and Khalifatullah. And then I think you are having two nice keys to start developing a new good narrative. Look at your proposal because I didn't see your literature review, so that I cannot tell you whether you build a good argument and you find a gap,
Yeah,
or it's too general and talking about oh too many things. No, the gap happens only when we see the literature review.
brilliant. Okay.
No literature review, we are all talking floating. Literature review is very important. Literature review, what people talk about last man, what people talk about Khalifatullah. From there you can say the two approaches are having an issue, and I'm going now to tell you use this to come up with the remedy here in this type of thought. Or for me, I think brother, you can the concept of Khalifatullah in the Quran can help you criticize the West and introduce a good narrative of what does last man mean, because their last man is all based on a rationalistic, materialistic, humanistic worldview or understanding of man. It is reductionist by nature.
Yeah.
Man himself is not understood. I'm not sure. Maybe if Fukuyama or the others are talking about last man, talking about the materialistic man, the economic man, the mechanical man, the evolution man, I agree. But if they are talking about the human, the end of the human, I disagree.
Yeah.
They don't understand the human. So the Western concept of last man got an epistemological problem in understanding who is the human, what is fitra. So the concept of Khalifatullah brings you to give this missing link in the whole understanding of the Western concept. You got it,
I
Zulfiqar?
got it. Yeah, thank you very much. I got it. Thank you for the.
Okay, Alhamdulillah. I think we will move from here, and I will see you next time. Inshallah. One comment I wanted to comment, maybe for the sake of next time, uh, we will give only 15 minutes to each student. We will not give the time open for free. Okay, 15 minutes. You squeeze yourself, you kill yourself, you put things forward so that we can guide you. Now I think, even though I'm talking to Zulfiqar and talking to Muhammad, but I'm talking to all of you. From now onward, don't bring to me a topic which is talking about many ulum, many sciences, many things. Focus. Very straightforward. When I read your topic, I see the problem already. When I see the title, I see the mushkilah. Done. Finish. Then I can move forward. You know, you are very wonderful people. Zulfiqar and Muhammad doing a great job, a great thing, and I really seeing a future in you, and also inshallah in our other brothers and sisters. Let this generation of Istak transform and bring new great ideas, inshallah. When you publish your works, people will say, oh, where is this? I'm going to go there. Where is it, Istak? I want to study there. Okay, Braz, I see you next time. Salam
Thank you very
alaikum wa
much. Thank you.
rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Thank you.
I have to run. Okay. Salam alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Okay. اوكي خلصنا.